Torah.
Okay, let's see. We have Barbara. Hi, Barbara. Good morning. Good Shabbos. So good to see you. We have Helen. Good Shabbos, Helen. Natalie. Hi. Shabbat Shalom. Susie, we already said hello, but hello anyway. Good Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom.
We said good Shabbos to Eric. Hi, Cindy. How are you? Good, good. Steve. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Sukasa. Hi. Shabbat Shalom.
Sukasa, that's a good hairdo. It's very hip.
Say that.
It's very hip.
Diane Mendel, hi, Shabbat Shalom. Tamara, Shabbat Shalom. How are you, neighbor? Carol, Shabbat Shalom. Mar and Harv, Shabbat Shalom. I see Alex Weisberg.
Hello.
Are you Howard's grandson?
I am.
Lucky you. Whoa, you must be smart.
Well, would you please show me whether you're wearing suspenders?
I do not appear to be, no.
Okay, well, I mean, that's the only way I can validate and Alexander, but okay, that's fine. That's fine. Larry, Shabbat Shalom. Cindy, you're over there. You move, Cindy. Stay still. Woof. Ray, Shabbat Shalom. Karen, Shabbat Shalom. Hi, Karen. Hannah Gall, if you're still here, we have a question to ask you. Can you find out whether we will have permission to have our current events class on August 7th next to the pickle class?
Yes. I sent an inquiry to the higher ups yesterday. I'm just waiting for confirmation from them that we can move forward with having both programs.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Of course, I may leave the current events class and go to the pickle class, but I mean, you never know. Marina, Shabbat Shalom. Risa, hi. Haven't seen you in a while. Hi, Risa. Nancy Bell, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Merle,
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, good to have you join us. Merle, I said hello to Kevin. Hi, Kevin. Shabbat Shalom.
Yeah.
Brad.
Shabbat.
Yeah, Brad is here. Barbara Dishler is here. This is very nice. Okay. All right. So the first item on my agenda has already been achieved. I had asked Anna about August 7th. Now, I don't know, Alexander, you got to tell me what year, where are you in school? You know, what's with you?
I just graduated from high school and right now I'm taking a gap year. I'm going to college next year.
You're taking a gap year. Knowing your family, I want to ask, and what are you doing during your gap year?
That's a question I've been asking myself a lot. I think I'm gonna mostly figure it out as I go, but I'm hoping to practice piano, maybe get in some traveling if I can.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad you joined us. That's terrific. Okay. Oh, so Merle, you have no voice from camp because of camp. Oh, you scream? All right. Uh-oh, Alexander, your grandfather's here. Take it easy, kid.
Okay.
Okay, all right. I don't normally do this, but there was something that we ended up with last week, which I have to tell you, I'm, just fascinated by, absolutely fascinated. And that's the story of the fiery serpent that was held up to do healing, right? That serpent in the desert. And right at the end, we mentioned if let's just go with the supposition. If we can suppose that the Exodus occurred somewhere around 1200 BCE, that's an assumption. But for the sake of the assumption, 1200 BCE, that fiery serpent on a stick existed at least until 600 BCE. According to the 600 date is fairly accurate. We date with King Hezekiah. Hezekiah shattered, broke, threw away. That's that serpent. Okay, that serpent. Yeah, medical course are a symbol, absolutely so. But that means that a stick, a staff with a fiery serpent was in the main sanctuary in the temple until 600 BCE, which means it was in there for hundreds of years. And you'd have to, and this seems to be valid, and you'd have to ask yourself, what do people do when they approach the central sanctuary and there is a staff with a serpent on it? What do people do? I mean, it's not a tourist thing. And scholars seem to indicate that the Israelites burned incense before that snake staff thing. It's just interesting, you know, with all the concern with monotheism, but there seems to be maybe 800 years in which the Israelites recognized a special sanctity to a staff with a snake on it. I will finish by saying there are biblical scholars who believe that along with the worship of the one true and only God, there was a snake cult within the Israelite community. It just interests me. I don't particularly want to worship a snake. It doesn't, you know, they're kind of like slimy, but there you go. And it calls into question again the notion that the moment the Israelites left Sinai, they were a monotheistic people that refused to recognize any other religious structure or symbol. That apparently is far from true. We're going to leave it there. I just like to think about part of the sanctuary furniture was a tall staff with a snake wrapped around it, a copper snake. That just, what do you think would happen? Sukasa, you're kind of active at Wilshire. What would you do if you say, you know, out of the sake of strengthening our connection to tradition, we would like to put a staff with a snake in the main sanctuary in Koreatown, you know, like kind of right up front. Would you be willing to do that?
Well, now that I think about it, I'm not quite sure why medicine has this staff with a snake, because I think people think of snakes and they recoil, no pun intended, out of fear. So
No, first
if
of
you
all,
want to have people come to the sanctuary, why would you put a snake there?
you backed away from my question, because in the Torah, it says that viewing the snake brought healing. It says that. So the snake and healing is Torah-based. So would you write a letter to the board and saying, in order to strengthen our ties to Jewish tradition, we would like to have a massive staff with a copper serpent in it in the front of the sanctuary. Very traditional. Okay? No. Huh? Okay. Now, August 23rd, we're doing a little calendar here. August 23rd was a very important Jewish date. Of course, it's in English, it's not. In Hebrew, it would be the 17th of Tammuz, the month of Tammuz. Does anyone have a clue as to why the 17th of Tammuz this year, 23rd of August, is important?
What is Tisha B'Av?
Who said that? Eric?
Me.
Okay, Eric, you're really in the ballpark. You're really in the ballpark. the 17th of Tammuz is the beginning of a period called the 3 weeks. The 3 weeks are the time from the 17th of Tammuz to Tisha B'Av. 3 weeks of mourning. And so I assume, given our own traditional predilections, that we fasted on the 17th of Tammuz, which was, of course, a requirement, leading up to Tisha B'Av. The 17th of Tammuz marks, according to the traditional calendar, the day on which the Romans breached the walls of Jerusalem. 17th of Tammuz. And it took 3 weeks until they got to Tisha B'Av, when the temple was destroyed. Okay, so we are in that period, and if you have very traditional friends, they will be marking this time. It is a time of solemnity and remembering. Then Tisha B'Av comes and commemorates a whole variety of tragedies within Jewish life. One tragedy which we don't remember much is that, according to Jewish tradition, on Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the month of Av, Moses smashed the 10 Commandment tablets. Okay, so that is one of the tragedies that is attached to that. The final 9 days that I'm giving you warning, the final days leading up to the 9th of Av, in other words, the first days of the month of Av, you are to eat no meat, you are not to wear freshly laundered clothing, and you are to study what is required in order to build the third temple. Okay? So that you know what it is that we're required to, well, somebody's required to do. In traditional Judaism, you know, I have shared this story with you, just my connection with the last 9 days of Av, of the first 9 days of Av leading to Tisha B'Av. Risa and I were in Jerusalem on a rabbinic special mission, a few rabbis and stuff. And the group was mixed. We had Orthodox Conservative Reform, and there was no meat served between first of Av and Tisha B'Av, with one exception. Anyone want to guess? It was an exception. When could we eat meat? Shabbos, right? So in the middle of this, Shabbos became acceptable and so forth. The building of the third temple is a messianic obsession in some quarters in Israel. How many of you have seen some of the temple appurtenances that have already been made in preparation for installation in the third temple? Have you seen, Howard, you have? You're muted, Howard.
There's a little museum, isn't there, somewhere near the Western Wall that has that all that we visited? Anybody?
There is that. There is in the old city. There was a display cabinet of a candelabrum of gold and other kinds of things, sitting and waiting for the building of the third temple. That's going to be quite a feat, because in order to build the third temple, what has to happen? Steve?
Apart from all of the traditional or from messianic things that need to happen, we need to get Al-Aqsa and the Dome of the Rock off of the Temple Mount to rebuild what was up there before they got there.
I don't know why some of the Muslim world views Israel with suspicion, but it is true that a small alteration of construction sites has to be made on the Temple Mount. That is to say, the Dome of the Rock has to be leveled. And so that to make room for this third temple. There are some Muslims who view that with a degree of hostility. Maybe we can talk it out. No, talking seriously, it's an incredible expectation that a number of Messianic Jews who are committed to a Messianic future believe. They believe that. Now, and who is going to be the chief architect of the third temple? Who?
Messiah.
Messiah. So the whole world is going to come to an end and turn upside down if that happens. I don't expect it. Some of you know that I have been mildly as obsessed with the Messianic pretender Shabbatai Tzvi. And Shabbatai Tzvi is and will forever be a favorite of mine, just because he was a manic depressive Messianic fake doesn't mean that I don't admire him. I'm liberal. Anyway, Shabbatai Tzvi took Tisha B'Av and made it into a holiday, his birthday. According to Jewish tradition, all of our sad days will be turned into joy when the Messiah appears. So that's a good thing. Please, Sukasa had her hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I wanted to go back to the Messianic. Do these Messianic Jews think that after we rebuild the temple that we're going to have priests again and sacrifice, and the rabbinic, they all disappear, all the rabbis?
Well, there is a tradition in my family that we have priestly family connections. So I don't worry about that. That's somebody else's problem. But the answer is, of course. Of course. Of course. It'll be a total change, permanent change. It is a time when heaven and earth will meet. The end of time will come. There'll be great battles, and we emerge victorious. This is all part. By the way, you have to be careful, Sukasa. They're not Messianic Jews. Messianic Jews are somebody else.
What?
Messianic Jews are Jews who accept the divinity of Jesus. That's a different category. These are Jews deeply committed to a Messianic vision. Different, totally different group. Steve.
Actually, it seems to me there are more evangelicals pursuing this than Jews, but in any event, you have to keep in mind even though they support Israel, the evangelicals' Messiah is different from the Messiah the Jews are expecting, because their Messiah is the second coming of Jesus, as opposed to the first coming of whoever the Messiah may really be.
Okay, I'm not going to pick about that. If you have these far right-wing Christians who are, in technical terms, Zionists, they want the rebuilding and the strengthening of the state of Israel. They want all Jews to gather there. And Steve, we're political. We deal with the people at that level. They want to help protect Israel. We deal with them as those who want to protect Israel.
Knowing their vision is false.
All that we don't think about is that if their dream is fulfilled, we're toast.
Right.
Okay? So it's political. Okay, we're going to deal with you here. And,
Worry about that.
but we'll have to wait. I'm going to move forward unless there is a question or comment. This is the beginning of the period leading up to Tisha B'Av. And you should know that early Reform Judaism, is one of the hallmarks of Reform Judaism, was to wipe out Tisha B'Av as an observance. It was one of the hallmarks of early Reform Judaism. There's a weird thing. You know that some parts of the Jewish community hold dances and parties on Yom Kippur. That exists. It was often part of the Arbiter Ring, or the very left-wing, I don't know, very left-wing part of Jewish life, to which my family were proud members. They did that. But there were balls, B-A-L-L-S, there were balls in New York City on Erev Tisha B'Av. Come on, let's celebrate, let's dance. The temple's destroyed. Why? Because we don't want the temple. We don't want sacrifice. We don't want priests. And so let's have a party. So it's no small matter, and it still is a matter of discussion. When the new Reform prayer books were being edited, trust me, there was serious discussion about whether or not Tisha B'Av would belong in our calendar. It does, but it was and remains a question. This is fun, but I want to get to text. Anything else? Anything else? Okay, terrific. So we can begin. Good Shabbos, everybody. Please turn to page 1060 in the Torah commentary, Torah, and it is Numbers 25:10 to 31, page 1060. Okay, and we are at, I'm almost there, 1064, 1060. Now, if you hold on to this, I'd like someone to read 6 through 9. 6 through 9. Do we have a reader? Do we have a reader? Somebody who wants to help the poor rabbi out? Do we have a reader? Do I have to call on you? Okay, Alexander, you lose. Do you have a Bible in front of you?
I do not. Do you know if it's possible to access online somehow?
No, it's too late. Yes, of course it's possible, but you lose. Okay. Anyone want to read?
I'll read.
Okay, Diane, thank you.
Okay. Just then, one of the Israelite men came and brought a Midianite woman over to his companions in the sight of Moses and of the whole Israelite community, who were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meetings. When Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw this, he left the assembly, and taking a spear in his hand, he followed the Israelite into the chamber and stabbed both of them, the Israelite and the woman, through the belly. Then the plague against the Israelites was checked. Those who died of the plague numbered 24,000.
Okay, now this is from last week's Sedra. It's the very end of last week's Sedra. The Israelites were taking on the worship of foreign gods. This was in the 39th year of the wilderness wandering, and God sent a horrendous plague. In the midst of the plague, apparently there was a lot of licentious behavior. Pinchas, referred to as Phinehas, Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw this, took a spear in his hand, and as part of his competition for the Olympics, stabbed both of them at one time, two to one, and killed them. Then the plague was stopped. Those who died of the plague, 24,000. Pinchas was a big deal. Pinchas's grandfather was Aaron. Pinchas's father was Eleazar, the high priest, Kohen Gadol, which means that Pinchas was in line to be Kohen Gadol. And he saw this act of public licentiousness. He took his spear and killed the two. But if you'd look at 2510, which is the beginning of this week's Sedra, okay? And 2510 is on page 1074. This directly follows what we just read. I need someone to read 2510 to 2515. Do we have a reader? 2510 to 2515. Who's, pardon?
We'll read. Can I
I
read?
don't know who that is. That Howard?
Yeah.
Okay.
2510.
Okay, the Women's Commentary 963.
And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, turned away my wrath from the Israelites when he zealously acted for my zeal in their midst. And I did not put an end to the Israelites through my zeal. Therefore say, I hereby grant him my covenant of peace, and it shall be for him and his seed after him a covenant of perpetual priesthood in recompense for his acting zealously for his God and atoning for the Israelites.
Hello?
Yeah, to go on, please, 14 and 15.
Oh, and the name of the man of Israel who was struck down with the Midianite woman, was Zimri, son of Salu, chieftain of the Simeonite father's house. And the name of the Midianite woman who was struck down was Cosbi, daughter of Zur, who was chieftain of the leagues of fathers' houses in Midian. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Be foes to the Midianites and strike them. Is that it?
Okay, we can stop there.
Yeah.
We can stop there. Now,
Hello?
Cosby is one of the most famous names. Everyone knows Cosby. She was the lady that got penetrated, and that, of course, is an interesting sexual allusion. She got penetrated by a javelin after being penetrated by the Israelite grandson of Aaron. Now, what the heck is going on here?
Hello? Hello? I see something in here, which I remember when I was 16-year-old watching the Republican National Convention at 1960. It says, set me on the road to conservatives by listening to Barry Goldwater's speech. I don't remember it exactly, but extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. Moderation is in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. So I hear echoes of Barry Goldwater's speech in this passage.
Okay, thank you. Some of us yearn for the bad old days of Barry Goldwater. Okay, what's going on here? And folks, this is a major story in the telling of Judaism. It is not an incidental, no one pays much attention to it. They do. And what is the Brit Shalom, the covenant of peace? And why does Pinchas get to be the progenitor of the priests forever? Seems like it's a pretty good reward. What's going on? And as I looked at this, I asked myself a question. Is vigilantism a value? Is it a good thing to go? We see people out there doing bad stuff. Go out there and stick a javelin in them. Tomorrow we'll probably want to point out the sexual allusions that are in the text, that where the javelin was shoved, where it penetrated, and how they died. The rabbis talk about that. We are not going to. But what's going on? Is this a value? Steve?
You're muted.
Steve, you're very muted.
Well, I assume, maybe incorrectly, that it's not the sexual act that is the problem just because she's a Midianite. It all has to do with the place. And unlike any act of vigilantism, God can't defend himself without using humans, and someone protected his sacred space and deserves to be rewarded.
That's very interesting, Steve. Thank you for that. Do we have any other opinions about this event? It is very controversial. Any other opinion? Okay, Doris Robinson. Hi, we're really growing today. Gonna have to get a bigger screen. Any other reaction to this, please?
Reaction.
Okay, Howard, go ahead. But I want other people to participate. This is a big issue. Go ahead.
I mean, it must not be that bad to be married. I mean, there's a little contradiction here because Moses was actually married to a Midianite princess. So
yes, indeed,
a little ambiguity going on here.
That is true. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. When you read this, do you want to teach this as a value in religious school? Pinchas came up, saw evildoers, and by the way, I think he failed to go to a court or anything, and he just took a spear and skewed shish kebab, 2 people. What do you think?
It's gruesome.
Yeah, I guess it is. I began asking myself, what's the difference between a zealot and an extremist? Do you remember Baruch Goldstein? Does that name remind you of anything? Remember Baruch Goldstein? Cindy, can you tell us a little bit?
He committed murders in Hebron. Right? Is that the right one? He murdered numerous people, and there's some found him a hero and others didn't.
And Baruch Goldstein was there to murder Arabs in a mosque, and he did it, and he continued killing until the people in the mosque trampled him to death. And there is, in certain segments of the Jewish community of Israel, memorials to Baruch Goldstein for his zealotry on behalf of God and the state of Israel. What's the difference between zealots and extremists, and let me throw in the next word, patriots? How do you define a difference? Believe me, it is hard. It is hard. I'm not seeing everyone because there's so many people. 3 people have raised their hand. I don't know who they are.
It's Brad, Tamara, Mara, and Harv,
That's
and
way too much. I can't
Mikasa.
remember. Brad and Tamara, then we'll come to more. Okay, Brad?
Okay, two things, Rabbi. Dante used the technique. It's called contrapasso, where the crime and the punishment are related, and that's what you're having here with the penetration idea. Secondly, this business with Cosby. What really troubles me about that is that we're told about the trickery that was practiced. Cosby was not I made this point yesterday. She was not she was the daughter of she's a Midianite princess. So I have the feeling that she's being instrumentalized by her father in an act of trickery. So she is to what extent is she guilty? Is she more of a victim? And the fact that she is killed along with the Israelite just makes me wonder if there's an element of impetuosity on the part of Pincus, and that troubles me. Like, why is she being killed? It's the Israelite man who's the one who's at fault.
I'm sorry. You know a broad spectrum of culture, but Brad, don't you know the expression cherchez la femme? Come on. Okay, Tamara.
I don't have an answer to the question you asked, because for me, and not just for me, the question is very much alive today. But to use another example, would someone who had killed Hitler be a hero or a criminal? In the biblical story, Pinchas killing those 2 people, has God say, if you didn't do it, I would have killed all of Israel. So this one act saved the whole nation. That does not answer the question, and I don't know that we can. I know I cannot. It's, we had the recent attempted assassination, and I can tell you people have very different views about the assassin. For some, he's a failed hero, and for others, he's a failed monster. It's not a theoretical question.
No. Having said it's not a theoretical question, we have to live with it. How do we handle that? How do we know? Yeah, well, we're throwing up our hands and we can't. How do we instruct people? By the way, someone's doing something really bad. Go kill them. It's a good thing. That in a sense, it's a violation of the U.S. court system and democracy and all that. Very complicated. But thank God this is the only instance of unchecked zealotry in the Bible. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Do you remember the story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal? Okay. Elijah, major figure, Elijah was threatened by the rulers to stop his business because he's interfering with the idolatry which is associated with the monarchy. Fine. So Elijah arranges a competition, a barbecue competition. 2 altars are set up, and he invited the prophets of Baal to pray to their God that their God would send fire and light the sacrificial fire. The background music of course, is come on, baby, light my fire. But that's the, Elijah did that. And then when no fire was sent from heaven, Elijah mocked them, said, you better pray louder. Maybe your God's asleep. And I can sympathize. Baal was already an old god. Maybe he needed a nap. You don't know. So they did more. Nothing happened. Then Elijah prayed to God first. He poured some liquid over his altar. And I assume it was like an igniting fluid, but it says water. They poured water over his altar. And boom, the fire erupted. Elijah won. What happened next? He murdered all the prophets of Baal. Right there. Oops, Elijah? We invite him into our Seder every year? Really? A mass murderer? Answer is yes. Yes. Elijah, therefore, is much more controversial among the rabbis than most people imagine. They just have him kind of like, the good guy. What about the Maccabees? Milad Onayiti. Whoever is with God, you're with me, and we are going to kill you because you are on the other side. Folks, how do you explain to another generation the difference between extremism, patriotism, zealotry? What are the guidelines? What are the guidelines? How do we know where we're going too much, even against an enemy? And wait for a response, even though it's hard. How do we do it? Come on. How do you explain? Are you comfortable with Pinchas skewering two people? Please, Fern.
Well, unfortunately, I don't have an answer either. It just seems that doesn't sound sarcastic, and it's not. It just seems like the difference is depending on which side you believe in.
Boy, you're probably right, and that's scary.
Yes, but it's a very subjective. I mean, the difference between a religion and a cult depends on how many people and which is yours.
Yeah, and there's also the comment that numbers don't matter. If two people are doing it, it's horrible. If 100 people are doing it, it's horrible. And okay, no, Fern and Tamara, others, what do we do, folks? This is not theoretical. So okay, I have Susie.
Well, isn't that what's going on in the Middle East right now? I mean, it is just, it's ongoing for centuries. It seems as though when there's disagreement and it escalates and escalates and escalates, violence comes in and war comes in. It's like a never-ending conundrum. And it's terrible. It's just terrible. Sometimes, I mean, I don't want to say this and hurt your feelings, Rabbi, but sometimes I leave this Torah study. I mean, I came into Torah study years ago, and I was very naive. I thought there were only beautiful stories in the Torah, one beautiful story after another beautiful story. And week after week after week, my heart is torn apart with all the violence that our people have done to each other and other people have done to us. And it's not any better now. It's just more sophisticated.
Susie, you're so right, which is why I feel inclined to go on to join on August 7th, the pickle making program. That's got to be fairly safe. But
And
yeah,
will it ever end? Will it ever end? No. Centuries of this.
I made a light joke, but I can't joke about what you said.
I know.
What you said is deeply important. And yeah, and this quid pro quo retribution cycle of violence, each act may be justified. The acts altogether create disaster. What do we do with that? What do we do? The Arabs killed some, we go back and kill others. I sometimes have the feeling that the only way to differentiate between a zealot and a terrorist is after a lot of time has passed and one side wins and they write the history. And when they write the history, they're going to say, who was the good guy? Fern.
But isn't that perhaps the beauty or the dark side of the beauty of the fact that life is not simple and choices are not always so clear? For those for whom it's clear, do become stuck and zealots and say the Torah can't change and the Constitution can't change and nothing about how we think can change. It's an endless conversation where we have free will to decide on what side of the line in any situation we fall on. And that's a beautiful thing, and it has terrible consequences.
May I jump in and say Mara and Alex have had their hand up for some time on this question?
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't even see Mara on my screen. Thank you, Mara.
I don't even, I'm not sure I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say that I don't see where the Midianite woman should have been punished. That she and her people have the right to their beliefs. And I think it's troubling when we start saying that this person should be destroyed because of their beliefs, which may be different from ours, but not in terms of their culture, quite correct. And I think we see that playing out right now in the pro-Palestinian protests where Jews are participating in those.
I'd also like to add that this all comes down to how and who defines justice. And I think that's the key thing. I think you end up with crazies who think that they can define justice on their own without anybody else's input. That's just me speaking.
Yeah, everyone is right, and we keep coming to the same problem that we're left with a mess. Is history the only one that can define the good guy and the bad guy? In other words, the victors write history, but does that make it right? And what is the proper response to evil? And how do you do it? It's complicated, and the story of Pinchas, one of the interesting things right here that says, verse 12, which I'm on my 1070, so 1074, say therefore, I grant him my pact of friendship. The Hebrew, lachen amor, say to him, behold, I'm going to give him briti shalom. Okay? And the translator made it friendship. Shalom. And some of the rabbis were as deeply troubled as we are this morning. And by the way, I find comfort in that. They were deeply troubled. And some of them taught that when it says he was granted a brit shalom, what it really meant was God pulled him off. Interesting? God cooled him off. The rabbis viewed what Pinchas did with great concern. God put him in a shower. Steve, and then I have one last thing.
I was going to say there's at least one line that I believe can be drawn where you separate vigilantism being appropriate or improper or zealotry, and that
I'm gonna
is,
go in another room.
and it seems to me if you are killing somebody solely because of their status or discriminate against solely because of their status, whether it be their religion, their sexual orientation, whatever it is, that's wrong, no matter what you believe. You know, if you believe it, God can deal with it, but that's not for humans to deal with. It's quite another when you're going after someone who has, let's say, committed a murder. Then it can be a tough question where vigilantism or when it's self-defense or whatever comes into play. But I think we can cordon off at least one aspect of this as being always wrong and not justified by whatever your religious, political, or other beliefs are.
But Steve, I think to disagree, I think it depends who's making the judgment. You know, I think if you look at, I'm blanking out on the word that the Arabs called the establishment of the state of Israel.
Nakba.
Nakba. You know, to them, Israel, it's a Nakba. And so they have rights to do whatever is necessary, whether it's kill Jews, get rid of the, I mean, everything goes because of that, because they believe their God or somebody told them it's right. So I don't think I think your answer is too simplistic from the standpoint that it's who's, as Rabbi said, it's who's writing the history.
No, the people who are killing the people in Israel now aren't the ones killing them. And a lot of jihadism, they're not just killing people in Israel. They're not engaged in a war to reclaim land they even think should be theirs. They're killing Jews worldwide because Allah says, kill them.
Okay, we're going to not pursue that only because there's no time left. And I wanted to, okay, Larry, a quick comment?
I did not have a quick comment, so I'll pass.
No, make a long comment, Larry. Come on.
Oh, okay. So I have always had problems with this story because of exactly what we're discussing, the vigilantism and the notion that it is right for you to take justice into your own hands and be rewarded for doing that. And trying to draw a line like Steve tried to draw just gets me frustrated because there does not seem to be a line. I mean, one of the ones that I was thinking about listening to the discussion today is whether there are alternative institutional ways to address the problem that you believe you're confronting. But that doesn't work either because people have different views of the effectiveness of the institutional solution. And so you're back again in the same quandary of when do I act because the voice in my head told me to act, as opposed to waiting for some other solution to appear. And it's just, I don't know that there's a good or easy answer to the question.
Rabbi, Alex had his hand up for a long time and then he put it down. Alex, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Okay, Alexander, you get the last word. Go for it.
I just think sort of similar to what Steve was saying, it's general guideline is I think the first thing that you have to ask yourself with this whole is zealotry justified is what is your end goal, and is that end goal a good thing? So for instance, I think with the case of Baruch Goldstein, as far as I know, he was just sort of killing Arab people because they were Arab, and that doesn't really accomplish anything unless what you want to accomplish is to kill all Arabs, but that seems fairly horrible. I think that essentially, like, if you want to ask the question, does the ends justify or do the means justify the ends, you have to first make sure that the ends are actually something that you want to get. And I think that's generally not going to happen if you're just killing people for their identity, like Steve was saying.
This is a day-long conversation. Alexander, thank you. Only for the sake of Shalom Bayit, Risa had her hand up, and I'm married to her, and I've got to give her a chance, otherwise I'll be yelled at. Risa?
I won't yell at you.
Pardon? Yes, you
I
will.
won't yell at you, but
Yes, you will.
what's going through my mind through all of this is our feelings about the Irgun versus the Palmach.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Blowing up the King David Hotel was not necessarily a loving act. And yes, Irgun Palmach. Yes, thank you. We're going to go on to Kaddish, but I would have to say that today was one of the most important conversations we could have. And I'm sorry it didn't yield a comforting solution. But your thoughts were terrific. And I guess if we go away from today's conversation and you're still thinking about it, then we've succeeded. That's the best I can do, but today was great. Thank you, thank you, thank you for that. And we're going to move now to and wow. Okay. Those who have passed away during the past month: Stephen Dressner, Richard Dunner, Lauren Scott Epstein, Helen Fleischman, Ethan Gordon, Andy Natker. And yahrzeits that have occurred during the past week: Marianne Barbanel, Virgil Byler, Jeanette Bell, Sanford Berkeley, Howard Bespris, Harry Bodick, Joseph Brandel, Howard Brown, Marion Brown, Sherman Carmel, Robert Dishel, Irving Max Dunner, Lorraine Eisenstadt, Ellie Ellison, Harry Feinstein, Rand Feinstein, Frida Fox, Marvin Frankel, Edwin Frischling, Jacob Galindo, Douglas Gardner, Lawrence Judy Benender, Art Ginsberg, Adam Gittleson, Bernard Gottlieb, Cynthia Gottlieb, Lillian Gottschalk, Edward Greer, Ronald Heft, Ethel Hendrickson, Jerry Hodis, Beverly Cooper Howard, Ruth Inkelis, Ruth Jacobs, Miguel Kahan, Melinda Lee Case, Ruth Kaplan, Esther Klein, Diana Jim Cossack, Ruth Levine, Joyce Lindsay, Ellis Lovey, Evan Mackey, Marilyn Malkin, Paul Mendel, Harris Mann, Rose Miner, Mary Miner, Elizabeth Meserve, Joseph Mishnik, Judy Michaels, Arthur Moore, Milton Nadich, Jerry Newberg, Jenny Pacholsky, Jack Prince, Sarah Reeve, Meyer Allen Rice, Erwin Ricker, David Rosenberg, Judith Harriet Rosenfeld, Charlotte Ross, Nana Zadegi, Musa Saidfar, Rose Shapiro, Walter Schloss, Walter David Schwartz, Joe Sheldon, Jaime Scher, Joseph Seneko, Muriel Solomon, Dorothy Toman, Isaac Turbati, Joan Tucker, Vincent Verzi, Bunny Wasser, Gail Weiner, Gabriel Weiss, Ciaretti White, Irene Grace White, Rabbi Alfred Wolf. If there are other names to be remembered now, please speak those names out loud or speak them in your hearts. Remember as well those who died in defense of the United States, those who died in defense of Israel, those who died through senseless acts of terror, and those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. We embrace them all. And we prepare for Kaddish. Yitkadal, Yitkadash,
Yalma Tivara Kirite,
Yamlich
Yamlicha Ute, V'chaye Om Yomecho, V'chaye Al Allah, Yizman Karev,
Imru. Amen.
Yehi Shmei
Rabba.
Le'olam Almei
Yitbarach.
Barak Yishtabach Yipor Yitram
Yitnase.
V'yitadar V'yitolem Shemeda Kudusha Richu
Leila.
Elohim
Birkata B'Shirata.
Tushkata V'netamata Damiran V'yalma Amen. Hey Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu Yakal Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom
Uyaseh Shalom.
Aleinu Yakal Yisrael V'imru Amen.
May God, who makes peace in the high places, make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, make peace in the household of Israel, make peace among all the families and nations of earth. And let us say amen.
Amen.
Amen. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Thank
Shalom,
you.
everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
Thank you. Thank
Shabbat
you.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat.